I'm going to do this one in my own voice. I think I don't think I'll do the ideal bureau of this one. One of the things I like most about salvage and restoration, one of the things that gets me up smiling if I'm going to go and salvage an idea, is the strange history, the strange effect, the strange shadow, actually, philosophy casts on the world. You see, you can often detect it in other sciences who've assumed something that was actually codified, well, usually about 300 years ago in the Enlightenment. And the godfathers of those two, of what gets smuggled in when you're not looking, is Descartes and Kant. Cognito ergo sum. The idea that somehow man is the measure of all things. And that I don't have to worry about my connections to the world because I'm just going to understand it. And I'm different from you and there's nothing we can do. There's no bridge between us. We just have to understand the world assuming that difference. And so much of psychology and physics was traditionally understood that way. And one of the joys of philosophy, of course, from my angle recently, is that those have been challenged. So you've got Damasio going back to 17th century philosopher, the love of my life, Spinoza, and using him to understand the mind and saying you don't want to do it with the self, you want to do it with the Spinozian model of the brain, which is much more complicated and allows for the fact that your brain and my brain can be somehow connected. Or you have Gerald Einstein with the theory of relativity. Does anybody know who he cited in his references? He cited Spinoza. Because Spinoza has a different account of time. Now, if you're like me, that means you're endlessly thinking, oh, I wonder what we'll do next. Who can we change a bit, alter a bit, and just throw out and see if it works? And I'm going to give you two of my most successful experiments. Kind of Frankenstein monsters of thinkers that I've made from time to time. Both influences on Kant. The first is Hume, the second is the other great love of my intellectual life, Leibniz. So David Hume. David Hume is one of those philosophers. He's a philosopher everybody thinks they know. Perhaps you do. He's famous for being the skeptical thinker. So he was the man who really argues that if you can't perceive it, and you're not perceiving it at the moment, it might not exist. And the ideas are just bundles of memories. Oh, and again, he does say all of that. But that's not how he begins. Oh, no. He begins aged 28 in a book called The Philosophical Treatise. First 3 pages. And if you know where he starts, well, he starts with this. He starts with a real question. What's the difference, he says, between memory and perception? I have no difficulty if I'm wandering through the streets of Paris, telling that apart from my memory of those streets afterwards. But what is it that makes them the same? And his answer, about halfway down that page, is remarkable. He says perception is like a heroine. It's lively, it's vivacious, it's like a Jane Austen character. It talks a lot. And that means different perceptions catch up with each other. They kind of relate to each other. And each perception then hooks with all the ones that are near it. And that light, that borrowed light from creation, as I might say, gives it a power of its own to pattern your mind, to burn trackways in your thoughts, to create principles. But all those principles are based on the fact that the light of perception is different from the light of memory. With my head on, I call it ontology. And that's half the mind. And that's the half that allows David Hume to deconstruct the self and to worry about whether anything can really exist at the end of that book. And then the second reality kicks in, beginning of the second book. At the beginning of the second book, he has a problem. What is it he'll say passions are? Well, they're obviously made by organs of the mind, but they create real problems, he'll say. Because the real problem with a passion is it's so hard to know what you're feeling. He's quite a young man, I guess. Isn't it hard, he'll say, to be able to tell love apart from joy, apart from pride? And if you don't know what you're feeling, if feelings are always resembling, how on earth can you pattern your mind? And he'll say there are 2 more problems about this that make this worse. You start actually having feelings when you're an infant before you can remember what you're feeling. And so by the time you become aware of who you are, you're already having torrents of feelings and very little ability to control them. All the more so because passion has its own veneer. It's a bit like the vivacity of feeling, except it's got a direction. So that if you have a really strong passion, you'll feel that this is right, this is true, this will enact memories that will then pull down the present. And your mind will turn into a vat of laudanum. You see, Hume, remember the time he's living, portion of laudanum, he's living over a drug-indazed Hughes. They're drug-phased reality. What is it, he'll say, that allows you to behave as not a drunkard? What on earth could it be? And his answer, he's usually accused of being an old-fashioned Tory for this. And maybe he is, but it's the bit of Tory I like, I think. Because he has a unique answer. Nobody else has been so stupid as to argue this. It's quite stupid. He'll say, what is it that gives me my sense of myself? Well, it's clearly not an idea of myself, because I deconstructed that from the first book, and it's obviously pants. It doesn't go anywhere. There is no thing, no perception I can say is me. But is there a feeling? And he'll say, yeah, actually there is. The feeling I have of myself is a feeling I have when I look at a habitat. The life I live in. My house. And he's very fond of his house. But you could these days say your friends. The pattern, the shadow you cast in the world. And what he'll then say is, as long as you are happy with that pattern, you will feel a pride in yourself. And that pride in yourself will make you feel that you exist. And it's from that feeling you have, because you know you are in the world, that everything else follows. Because once you become a position in the world, you can be moral, you can be good, you can work out how you're going to relate to other people, because you'll know who you are. You can ground then your own materiality and morality in your knowledge of your habitat. And it's that habitat that you have to defend. So who we are depends on what we own, you actually say. It's a very interesting argument. Now I'm going to give you the other side of that. Much madder. My second favourite philosopher after Spinoza is Leibniz. Now Leibniz is the co-inventor of differentiation, an incredible mathematician. He also has an early prototype of the Babbage machine, all of that, it's all Leibniz. So much of the world is actually thought by Leibniz. And he has this incredible account of what reality is. He'll say real reality is little flickers of perception, and each perception, he'll say, is like a glass harmonica. They reflect and vibrate with all the others, and the universe is just a great big song of perceiving things. These minute little perceptions then look out on the world and have little desires, and it's by their own desire the world is moved forward. But animals are quite different. You see, we have bodies, and as we have bodies, our body is like a burning glass of all these desires, gathering them up. So at the last, in the tempest of emotion, you're caught, as it were, in a storm wind, driven hither and thither by desires, like gusts of wind, change moment upon moment upon moment, driving you hither and thither. But Leibniz says, it's in that thought your freedom lies. You see, you must learn to understand your mind, what it really is. It is like an echo chamber of a million tempests of thoughts, but you have some control. He'll say, at a moment of peace, learn to go through those desires you're already feeling, the ones you're only half aware of, and wheedle out the ones you don't want in later times. You don't want to grow because they're like seeds. They're like weeds. The method then is gardening. The aim is freedom. Alternatively, he'll say, when you are caught in the horns of some great dilemma, driven hither and thither, remember, your emotions change. At any one moment, you have to choose what your desire will make you choose. You've got no freedom to act against desire. None at all. But you've got a freedom, a right to choose to act when and where you will. A wise man, then, is one who runs his mind as if it was a corrupt Venetian republic. He bides his time, waiting for the desires to move down a little, creating little parties of his own. And when the moment is right, he acts and makes the choice he wants to. If only the last king of Rome, Sextus Tarquinius, had waited for a moment longer on a temple gate, he would have not acted as he did, and history would have been different, Leibniz would say. And remember this, as you're caught in that tempest of fear and feeling, you are reenacting, as we all are, the very moment of creation. For each one of those emotions, if you followed them, each desire would lead to a different you and a different universe to have it in. Making your mind up then is an act of creation, and you need to be more careful about it.